This week, the Rabbinical Council of New South Wales put together a conference for about 25 rabbis who came together in Newcastle, and we had a guest rabbi from Melbourne, a guest rabbi from Israel, talking about Jewish law and Jewish thought. It wasn't a conference of planning on how best to do our work in a practical way, whether it be Royal Commission or assimilation or whatever like that. It was simply a time that rabbis came together, studied Torah together. And so what is the significance of the study of Torah? Whilst at that conference, we were notified that a soldier named Yehuda Katz was returned. His body was returned. This is a soldier who his body was missing for 44 years. He was taken captive in the Lebanon War, 1982, the first Lebanon War. There was a terrible battle with the tanks. We're beneath a ridge, and they were attacked, and 6 soldiers were taken captive. 2 were released in some exchange, and the other 4 remained in captivity. And slowly over the years, they got the rest back. Mostly 3 were kept for a very long time, even though they actually survived the initial attack. They were captive. They paraded them at some point. So we don't know when they were killed. But ultimately, every one of them came back to Kveras Yisrael, to Jewish burial. Now, this Yehuda Katz came from Yeshiva Kerem B'Yavne. He studied in the yeshiva. It's called the Hester program, where half the time you study and half the time you go to the army. And he was very diligent. He was a great Torah scholar, very diligent in the studies of Torah. He had a chavrusa who's today a Rosh Yeshiva, head of academy in Yeshiva University. His name is Meir Goldwicht. Now, Meir Goldwicht relates that the day that they went onto the buses to go to the war, they went to pack their bags. They put the bags down near the buses, and they went back into the study hall to study, the 2 of them, Meir Goldwicht and Yehuda Katz. And afterwards, they went had to go to the men's room. They went to the bathroom. And from the bathroom, they were about to go onto the bus. So this Yehuda Katz, Hashem Yimkom Damai, may God avenge his blood, said to his study partner, Meir, he says, we can't go to war from the bathroom. We got to go from the study hall. Came back into the study hall and studied a little bit, and then went back, went onto the buses. Reminds me of a story of a great chassid who came of age. He woke up in the middle of the night and went to the bathroom. When he did that, he would always afterwards study some Torah. He says, it cannot be that my soul comes down from heaven, because that's where your soul goes. Your soul leaves your body when you go to sleep, comes down when you wake up. It can't be that my soul comes down from heaven just to go to the bathroom. I have to do something of purpose. Now, what is so special and great about this Torah study? So, in this week's Torah portion, we continue with the laws of war. There's actually laws of war that the Torah gives. In last week's Torah portion, it continues in this week. As a matter of fact, many soldiers relate how this Yehuda Katz, before their final battle, brought everyone together and quoted from the laws of Maimonides, who speaks about laws of war and how important it is not to be afraid and to fight with all your might and to know who you're protecting, etc. So, however, this week's Torah portion begins with the following words. When you go out to war upon your enemies. And Rashi tells us there's 2 kinds of wars. There's what's called a defensive war and an offensive war. The defensive war is called a war of mitzvah. It's an obligatory war that you have no choice but to fight. That's a war that the enemy attacks you, or the war to initially conquer the parts of Israel that God promised us. And then there's the offensive war, which is if a king decided he wanted to expand his territory. There's another kind of war. And that's the war we're talking about here. So it's not an obligation, it's only you can. The question is, why does it say war is something we do together as a community? Why does it say kiseitse in the individual? Why does it say to the war? It should say to war. What's to the war? It's like a famous war. And then it says, it doesn't say against your enemies, it says upon your enemies. What's the Torah teaching us? So the leaders of thought in Musar and Chassidus say that what this is actually teaching us is that there's a different kind of war. There's the war with Yetzer Hara, evil inclination. And so that's why it's called the war that everyone has, the war that you can't get out of. Everyone's always going to fight this war. You should know, Alivecha, that you are upon your enemies, because Hashem Hakecha, God your God, gives them into your hands. You know you have the power to win that war. This is a war that on the one hand is always going to happen. On the other hand, you have to know that you will be successful in it. So now the question is, why do we call it a permissible war? Is it an obligatory war? It's not a permissible war. This is a war of life, the war against the Yetzer Hara. So there is an interesting perspective, which is that there is parts of life or mitzvot that we do that is a battle. And then there's mitzvot that we do that we go beyond the battle. Prayer is considered a time of battle, time of war. We think about the natural world and how God gives a life and existence, etc. So once we're thinking about the natural world, that already comes into our mind, and there's a fight that we have not to allow other foreign thoughts into our head, etc. And to overcome our character deficiencies. That's what prayer is about. It's to work on ourselves. And so therefore it's a real war. But then there is, as King David says in Psalm 27, that we say now in this period of time, of the Omer, one thing I ask, to sit in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to study Torah. When you're in the presence of the king, there's no war. The presence of the king, that's what Torah study is, divine wisdom. And you live in that world, you win the war without fighting. That's the idea behind it. That's what Torah study is. And so now you don't have to fight all the time. The Torah is hinting at the fact that the war that we fight doesn't have to be. Because if you live in the world of Torah, you're not fighting. You're actually, you are in God's world. And so that encourages us to take the time to study Torah. That's why the Torah is called a refuge, a city of refuge. Just like a city of refuge saves you, Torah saves you from the Yetzer Hara, from evil inclination. Because it lifts you, it makes you higher, makes you greater. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to focus on it and to live with it. There was the uncle of the Tzemach Tzedek, his name was Yosela. Anyway, he went to the mikveh, the bathhouse one day, and he was in the bathhouse in those days, guys used to sit and talk, and it's like a pub, if you'd like. And they're debating world affairs, and they were already sacking the czar, and the stock market was going up or down, whatever. And the two guys are debating, so they say, let's finish this discussion, come to my house in a half hour, we'll have a cup of beer, and we'll have some beer, and we'll continue the discussion. Meantime, Yosela comes back home. He is a man of intellect, so he takes out a chumash and he starts to read the portion and goes into the commentaries and so on. He's engrossed. All of a sudden he hears a knock on the door. He opens up, says, yes. So, I'm the guy in the mikveh. He invited me. He says, that Yosela, that was the Yosela of the mikveh. Now it's a whole different Yosela. In other words, he was lifted higher. He was in the world of Hashem. He was in the world of God's wisdom, of Torah. That's what happens when we study Torah. So we have to make the time, we have to carve out time to leave the war, because the war is always happening, always happening. It's like a fly. The Talmud tells us the Torah is like a fly. You send it away, it comes back, send it away, it comes back. So you want to run away from it sometimes, have some respite, and that respite is the study of Torah, Shabbos.